Could I say something?
Go ahead.
I am the king of rock and roll. Ow, ow, ow. My. I just had to do that. Now I feel so much better. I got it out.
In the years following Elvis's death, Little Richard often expressed appreciation and even love for Elvis.
Elvis is one of the most electrifying entertainers ever lived in the world. There's never been an entertainer as electrifying as Elvis Presley.
But this wasn't always the case. Stay tuned to hear why Little Richard used to say that he was the king of rock and roll and not Elvis. Their rivalry started back in 1956 when Elvis and Pat Boone covered Richard's song Tutti Frutti. Little Richard had released the song in October 1955, and it was a hit, but it only reached number 21 on the charts. Pat Boone's single of Tutti Frutti, which was released in January 1956, was actually competing with Little Richard's single at the same time in February 1956, and reached a higher chart position at number 12.
And did you know that Elvis Presley and Pat Boone sold more of Tutti Frutti than I did? And I wrote it and sung it?
Elvis's single version of Tutti Frutti wasn't released until several months later in August 1956 as a B-side on the huge Presley hit Blue Suede Shoes. However, Elvis did perform Tutti Frutti on TV for 2 different appearances on the Dorsey Brothers TV show in February 1956. Little Richard seemed slightly resentful that Elvis and Pat Boone were making more money off the song than he did, even though he got his start a few years earlier.
When I came out on the record scene, Elvis Presley was not out. In '51, I recorded for RCA Victor before Elvis Presley. Then Pat Boone covered Tutti Frutti, although he covered a lot of other people. He was covering everybody that could be covered. I was mad when he covered me because it stopped my sales.
Also, Elvis performed Richard's song Ready Teddy on his first appearance on The Ed Sullivan Show on September 9, 1956. This performance gave the song exposure to approximately 60 million viewers, and Richard later started to appreciate that.
But later, I praised him for it. He and Elvis Presley, I thanked them for it at least, not praised them, I thanked them for it, because they opened that wide door. By them being white, they made the door bigger for me to walk through with my songs.
Little Richard had a somewhat tumultuous career and dropped out of the music business altogether in 1958 to study religion. But 4 years later, in 1962, he returned to the music business and toured frequently in the UK and Europe. It was clear that Little Richard was not happy that Elvis was called the king of rock and roll instead of him. In fact, while Elvis was still alive back in 1972, Little Richard made a point of declaring this in an interview, while wearing a leather headband that said the king. But in fact, Little Richard didn't stop there. He also said he was the creator of soul music.
I'm the king of rock and roll, and I'm also the emancipator of soul and the creator and the originator, my God.
Years later, he even claimed he invented hip-hop. Little Richard said he went hip-hop, hip-hop. When he walked, "I invented hip-hop," he declared.
And you know I'm not conceited. No. I've never been that way. I'm not conceited. I'm convinced.
But the truth is, Little Richard was a very flamboyant performer and never shy about promoting himself. During this 1972 interview, he started complaining that Chuck Berry was at the top of the bill and closing the show instead of him.
Oh, I'm going to fix him. And he is my friend, but I'm going to fix him. They made him the star of the thing. Can't nothing take my throne. How can he have the nerve, the audacity to walk on? I'm Little Richard.
It seemed that he harbored an underlying resentment that Elvis was called the king of rock and roll and not him. He made this very clear in 1971 when he released a song and album called The King of Rock and Roll. In the title song, he addressed several other artists by name, including Ike and Tina Turner and Tom Jones, as he sang in a tongue-in-cheek style why he was better than them. For Elvis, he said, "I'm gonna walk over your blue suede shoes," and then declared himself the king of rock and roll. To listen to this song, see the link in the description below. Ironically, although Richard was upset that Elvis sold more copies of Little Richard's songs than he did, that may have inspired Richard to record Hound Dog. This song was originally released by Big Mama Thornton in 1952, and it was a #1 hit on the R&B charts, selling 500,000 copies. The song was written by Lieber and Stoller, and Thornton sang it in a rhythm and blues style. Elvis got inspired to record the song after he saw the group Freddie Bell and the Bellboys sing an up-tempo version of it in Las Vegas. Freddie changed some of the lyrics of the song, adding the phrase, "You ain't never caught a rabbit." Elvis recorded the version of Hound Dog using these alternative lyrics. Presley's faster tempo, rock and roll version of the song was a #2 hit in 1956, released as a double A-side with Don't Be Cruel, and sold 4 million copies in the US and an estimated 10 million copies globally. It's surprising that Little Richard chose to record this song in 1957. He sang it up-tempo like Elvis's version and even used the rabbit lyrics. You can listen to Little Richard's version of Hound Dog at the link in the description below. The high energy of Little Richard's 1950s performances was depicted in the 2022 Elvis movie. However, did Elvis and Little Richard ever meet in real life? In the film, there is a scene that shows Elvis at a club called Club Handy in downtown Memphis, watching Little Richard perform Tutti Frutti on July 3, 1956. In truth, Little Richard performed in Memphis that year, in April, at a different club, when he was on the bill with Fats Domino. However, there is no evidence that Elvis was there. Find out what other surprising myths about Elvis are shown in the 2022 Elvis movie in this article at the link in description below. Meanwhile, the debate about who is the real king of rock and roll has been going on for years between the black and white communities. Little Richard believed if it wasn't for his race, he would have gotten more exposure and sold more records like Elvis.
See, they didn't want a black guy to be the one that created rock and roll because the white kids liked it. And they didn't want the white girl screaming over no black boy. And by me being a black guy and a good-looking black guy.
So where did the phrase the king of rock and roll first start appearing, and why? The truth is that the king of rock and roll title was started by the media. But being labeled the king wasn't about who was the best. It was about who was the most popular, which was measured mainly by record sales. The truth is, the king of rock and roll label was used because Elvis sold the most records. While Little Richard came before Elvis, he didn't sell as many records, especially in 1956, the year that Presley's career exploded. So, is there another label that could perhaps reflect Little Richard's rock and roll legacy? Little Richard said it best in a 1982 interview.
Rock and roll music.
I was the architect of rock.
But did Elvis and Little Richard ever meet later in life? In Richard's authorized biography, there is a quote that Elvis said this to Little Richard. "Your music has inspired me. You are the greatest," 1969, unquote. Little Richard also said in his authorized biography that when he was performing in Las Vegas, Elvis was one of the celebrities that came to see him. In later years, Little Richard said that they were good friends. So if you enjoyed this video, be sure to like this video to help this channel grow. Please subscribe to this channel and ring the bell for notifications of future videos, and keep watching more Elvis videos here.